I feel really honored to be following what we would say down south is Mr. Walter. um, Only I don't have the accent anymore. I lost my accent. So, where I'm coming from when it comes to world building is that, of course, we're always creating and co-creating our reality, planting seeds for the future by what we do now. We're living in an exciting historical moment for humanity, in my opinion, where empire is collapsing and the dominant worldview, the dominant mindset is shifting. Consciousness is expanding. And in the old paradigm, our relationships to life and each other were seen as individualistic and competitive, predatory, dog eat dog, might makes right, and of course, rape culture on an international scale. And now I believe we are shifting to a paradigm that acknowledges and values community, interdependence, cooperation, and personal sovereignty. So this is something that in a lot of indigenous cultures, this moment was known, was seen by the seers. But I feel like now we have scientists and academics and all kinds of people saying in their own ways and their own words that this is what's happening now. From the perspective of higher consciousness, the shift is from me to we. It's not about we dominating the me, but it's one in which the me and the we are in balance, because both matter and inform each other. Actions of the individual impact the collective, and the collective impacts the individual. So ideally, we strive for both the me and the we to be well, and of course we include all of life, all of our relatives, into that concept of community, collective, we. So as we shift paradigms, we pretty much have to rebuild all of our institutions around the globe. Families are going to look different, education is going to look different, healthcare, governance, everything you can think of is going to be restructured, and it has to be really to avoid ecological collapse. And again, whether you believe the scientists, the academics, or the seers, they all agree on that issue. Ecological collapse is on the way, inevitable in some places. Capitalism and colonialism are not sustainable, and if we are not conscious of this transformation already in process, if we are not actively trying to live the future we want now, someone else's vision of the future will be imposed on us. So I believe it's important to create the future consciously, intentionally, through our day-to-day activities, how you treat people, how you work, what you create, how you create, and so on. And of course, those activities need to be fed by dreams and visions, individual and collective dreaming of outcomes. What does justice look like? What do families look like? What does governance look like? And so on. And I'm guessing as artists that we're probably of one mind in terms of recognizing that our creative work is always a reflection to some ourselves and the world that we currently live in. And we can always switch our focus to creating reflections of what will be. Co-dreaming, predicting, and co-creating our future selves and our future lives, and there's nothing stopping us from creating future narratives, stories of what is to come, and doing that now. So this workshop is geared toward connecting, sharing dreams, and raising awareness about the power that we possess as individuals and communities to create better lives for our future selves and the generations that follow us. So that's the intention of this workshop. In my understanding of workshop, everyone participates, which is why I had asked for this U-shaped circle, whatever we could do. I wasn't sure what the venue would support. But I didn't want to make this a lecture or performance or, like a formal presentation or anything. I really wanted everybody to be a part of it, participate, contribute. So I hope that we can do that. And given our time constraints, would like our workshop to kind of focus on the idea of Sankofa. Do people know what Sankofa, or does anybody know what Sankofa? All right. Anybody else know Sankofa? Oh, you're a very unlikely person to know it. Cool. So, if you haven't run into the concept or the idea, Sankofa is an Adinkra symbol. It's the Adinkras and the Sankofa is a concept that comes from the Akan people of Ghana. And it translates, the way my people translated it was go back and fetch it. I still can't do the damn accent. I really lost my accent. But anyways, I really do it.
Sankofa.
Sankofa. Okay, Sankofa. I was thinking about fetch. I was thinking about go back and fetch it, but never mind. Go
Sorry.
back and fetch it. Yeah.
Go back and fetch it.
Which. So Sankofa is a type of mythological bird, and the bird's body is depicted facing forward, but its head is turned backward toward an egg that sits on its back. And it symbolizes the retrieval of ancestral wisdom to inform future progress. The Sankofa is probably the most common Adinkra symbol in the African diaspora, to the extent that I've seen it. Adinkra symbols were originally printed on cloth, and there are, hundreds of them? Hundreds, yeah. And these days, the Sankofa bird now shows up as like business logos and jewelry and tattoos and all kinds of things. And I believe the Sankofa, like all symbols, is alive. Sankofa has power that aligns with its meaning. To be in relationship with Sankofa is to be informed by ancestral wisdom, to recognize that. So it's about the recognition of what served our ancestors, so that we can bring that forward. For African Americans, Sankofa reaches back to pre-colonial societies, or because the word pre-colonial centers colonization, I prefer to say our original African indigenous cultures, which were land-informed and spiritually infused cultures in which communities valued me in balance with we, and maybe not every culture on the continent in every era, but those values and practices were and are present to this day, as I understand. And we have the opportunity, particularly in this moment, to choose whether we would like to bring some of those values and practices and ways of life forward, not to extract or appropriate, but to activate or to re-inspirit and recenter Sankofa in our lives, or any other concept or idea, practice. So in this session, I'm asking you guys to maybe share and discuss one question. And that question is, what from your ancestral lineage or lineages, if you are, have many, wherever you're from, whatever culture, whatever spiritual traditions, might inform our shared futures. And I recognize that there will probably be a number, like a number of futures. That's why I put the S on the end. It's going to be a diversity of experiences, just that there's a diversity of experiences now in our world. Some people are experiencing war, of course. Some people are experiencing comfortable, abundant lives. Some people live in societies that value family and community. Others live alone and they're lonely. Others are sowing division, and still others are unifying and working together. And that's going to be in the case with the future as well. There's going to be different kind of futures, all connected, all impacting each other, but different experiences of reality. So I don't mean to imply that our visions of the future are going to look the same in this exercise that we're doing. I love that our dreams are so beautifully different from each other. We're going to continue, again, in my opinion, as a human species, to experiment and try different things. We don't all have to live the same dream. The planet is big enough for many life-affirming dreams to be given an opportunity to flourish without conflict. But for me, the point is that this workshop is not about coming to a consensus around any one particular vision, and it's more about sharing and learning about each other, dreaming together, so that those dreams can inform our actions in the now, waiting for the future to be shaped for us. And I realize as well, someone pointed out to me the other day, that not everyone has a satisfying relationship with their original culture, and that's okay, because you can start with something that you don't like and you don't want to see come forward. You know, gender roles are an example. Pre-capitalist caste or class systems. Maybe you're not into divine rulers or privileged birthrights or the gender division of labor. And so, again, this isn't about idealizing the past. It's about finding that egg or that gem of an idea or practice that makes sense to bring forward, in whole or in part or modified. So I feel like one thing that this discussion can do is, or discussions like this can do, is erase some of the shame that you know, we were trained to carry as colonized people who were told our ancestors were uncivilized, intellectually inferior, superstitious, whatever. You know, we can recognize the positive aspects of our ancestral life ways. We don't have to idealize or claim, you know, some form of superiority, to simply recognize that some of our cultural practices promoted well-being and good life. Minobamadsuin in the Anishinaabe language, or Ongwahonwe, Neha in the Haudenosaunee languages. So I'm going to ask you guys in a minute if you wouldn't mind forming small groups. I guess the chairs are mobile to the extent that you can, maybe down here. Up to 4 people. Try and join with people you don't know yet. And discuss the question: what 1 or 2 practices, structures, ideas, whatever, yeah, so I'll repeat the question at the end. I think it's better to repeat it at the end. But yeah, so to share and discuss your ideas within your group, and after that we'll reconvene. As I say, you don't have to agree. We can you know, kind of share, you know, what came up in your small groups. Very quickly, I'll try and give you an example that I'm going to bring to the exercise. Comes from my Cherokee background, and one of the things that Cherokee communities did was that when men and women came back from war, or they come back from like big game hunts, hunting deer or whatever. We didn't have moose down there, but we had deer. I think that's, or bears, you know, that's probably the biggest game that we would hunt. But they weren't allowed to come back into the community. They had to set up camp outside of town. We had towns. And they had to do healing and purification ceremonies. They had to take time for contemplation and prayer, and they had to do some emotional rebalancing work when they came back after a war, after a big hunt. And before they could rejoin the community, there's a term for a group of what's commonly translated as beloved women, but in the language it's called gigao, and of course it's not the best translation, but the gigao were these women who usually older women who had served the community most of their lives and, or done, courageous things or, were leaders of some kind. These women were the kikau, and the women were the ones that would decide. They would sit and they would talk with the returning, mostly men were the hunters and the warriors, but also some women. And they would sit with them and they would determine were they healed enough to return to the community. And it was recognized that, like killing human beings and other living beings leaves emotional scars, it fractures the soul. We had this notion of soul retrieval as part of their healing process. And today, we of course might use the word trauma, but the Cherokee knew that. I think most of our peoples knew that. And the Cherokee provided the space, the time, the support to heal for people who had become traumatized from serving their community. And I think that's a useful practice to bring forward into our future, not just for military and police, which I hope we'll eventually be able to abolish, but also for protests, marches, occupations, blockades, and also for the collective trauma that we experience witnessing all of this shock porn that we're exposed to on social media. The genocide in Palestine, the murder of, ICE protesters, raids on indigenous land, reclamations, and that kind of thing. And it is important to recognize, bystander trauma can be just as damaging to the spirit as trauma that's experienced directly. And we also have, collective traumas from, if we experience natural disasters. And in this area of the world, we've seen a lot of communities have to relocate or evacuate from wildfires and floods and that kind of thing. So that's an example of a practice that could be modified for future use or current use, the idea of that healing. Recovery spaces in our communities and organizations to help folks that have been traumatized by various life events. So that's my example as my contribution to this conversation. Are there any questions? I'm going to repeat the question and give you the directions about the groups of 4 people. Any comments or questions or thoughts? Okay. All right, so I'm going to ask you guys then to break up into groups of maybe mostly 4 people. And as I say, try to group with people that you don't know yet. I'm not sure how many minutes. Well, let's do it for 20 minutes. And then we'll come back, we'll reconvene. 20 minutes, yeah. Is that okay? I can't see anybody because the light's in my eyes. So somebody shout out if that 20 minutes is going to work and give us maybe another 10 minutes to share after. Thank you. Okay, so the question again is, what practices or ideas from your original cultures, from your ancestral lineage or lineages, can inform our shared futures? So on that note, miigwech. Yeah, I'm just wondering if anybody would like to share anything that went on in their group. We're going to ask you to use the mics because we're still on Zoom. So, yeah, anybody want to share what they talked about in their small group?
yeah, we shared our culture heritage and the values we think will be valuable for the common humanity. So Lily shared her culture, and she emphasized the importance of intergenerational connection. And yeah, Janet shares the grandchildren or grandfather teaching that is about, the older generations value how to instill to the younger generations. And for myself, I'm come from a Chinese culture background, and I shared about my recent creative works that will influence the Chinese traditional landscape paintings that we call the mountain and water paintings. That is really has the Chinese philosophy that human beings should have harmony among ourselves and also with the nature. And also I shared the beautiful arched stone bridge in Hangzhou. It's like it's a really beautiful circle with this bridge and also the reflection on the water. So it's a perfect circle represents the harmony that our human beings should aim for. Yeah. So.
Okay, maybe I'll just speak briefly to sort of what I thought sort of collectively we came to, which was about being able to stand in your identity and your lineage, your ancestry, and the teachings and the culture that comes through that, whether that's a continuous line or whether that's a line that's been broken or fractured in some way, in a way that is both like curious and conscientious and also relational as well. Do either of you want to add to that?
Yes, what you raised about beauty, joy, and mischief from queer and trans lineages as practices toward relationality and liberation. For me, coming from Jamaica with direct ties to Ghana, according to Caribbean, what do we call them? Historians and specialists. So yes, I trace my lineage there, my language as well, and the Anansi stories which inform my arts practice, and just daily wisdom. One thing I shared was listening to this famous kind of preacher talk about giraffes and tortoises. Oh, it's because I brought oppression into the space. I'm sorry. Or deliverance. It depends on your relationship. But, the giraffes and tortoises, he seemed to be implying some hierarchical relationship and dismissing tortoises, which in Anansi and Brer Rabbit stories, like, doesn't the hare, like the tortoise, win the race? Right? So it just signaled to me like this person is a snake oil salesman, essentially, is one way that, the wisdom speaks to me. It's cultural preservation that I think can lend itself well to just where we're going, how we're living, and what we know and what we do with what we know.
Yeah, I think you guys did it. I'm gonna pass it off to Sam's group.
I think we came, Bramley talked to us about her graduate studies in terms of the thing that stood out for me that we talked about was showing up. I think we all kind of touched on it in various ways, and how, for myself, When I feel despair about what to do, the answer is something. Something is not always immediately evident, but the start of it is getting up, showing up.
Yeah, definitely. We talked a lot about that. How we've learned from our various cultures and backgrounds how in the past people have not shown up. And the idea of having that as you're something that's in your background and vying to change it. And in all of our practices, all three of us are sort of artists, but also mostly arts managers. In our work, how can we do that? What does that look like? How can we listen and make that a guiding factor?
And I just want to first start by thanking my team members for being so open and vulnerable and showing up. That seems to be the theme. That's how we can meet each other, right? And that's how we can see each other. So I just want to thank you guys. And I think to just add, because they did a lot of it, is, we talked quite deeply about the way that spirit shows up in these spaces. And in the world that we're living in, I think it's really important to be thinking about how do we build spirit, right? When there's so much noise and there's so much media and there's so many things that feel like they're going wrong and they're going another direction, how do we build capacity within ourselves? How do we sort of meet our spirit? And the one thing that we've talked about that I think maybe is important to say here that is definitely connected to our ability to show up for others is to sort of allow our spirit and the container for resilience to live together, and what are the things that we need to do to feed our spirit and to nourish our resilience as two different containers that are connected to one another. And so that is sort of felt very important to the conversations we're having and definitely additional. But I think the thing we'll say or we'll ask everybody here today is, maybe that's something you can think about, as you move away from our session today. How can you continue to build a relationship to your spirit that's your own, and that's individual? And how can you authentically build resilience in yourself? Because it's the only way you can show up for others. So that's what I'll ask.
We do have a comment from our Zoom. From my Guyanese West African lineages, I would love to see the 9-night grieving celebrations brought into the future, and from the UK lineages, a reclaiming of nature-based reverence and knowledge.
Awesome. I'm not sure which mic to use now. Just want to, you guys have the final word. I have nothing more to add, and I just really appreciate you playing with me. Thank you very much. Charles is up next, and just appreciate you all. Miigwech.